Hi everyone, my name is Brett Shores and I am surely blessed. Today I want to share my testimony with you. This is a story of addiction. It is a story of loss and hopelessness, but most importantly, this is a story of hope. But before we begin, just real quick, I want to ask that you please hit that like and subscribe button if you're into family content and testimonies like this. My story begins at a young age. I grew up with my father, who was a preacher. He taught me about the Lord. He told me about Jesus Christ and the sacrifice that he made. I had been saved at a very young age, and I believe that I was saved throughout the entire process of the events of this story. However, I was a very rebellious child, and I ran from God hard. At the age of 17, I decided I wanted to join the United States Army. I had joined and deployed to Iraq in 2007 to 2009. During that process, while deployed to Iraq, I was injured. And when I came back, I was medevaced back from Iraq, and they had put me on very powerful narcotics. I was on the narcotics for about a year, till about 2009, late 2009, when I ETS'd out of the military. Once I ETS'd and went into the VA system, a system that I believe has many flaws, and this being one of them, they took me from being one powerful narcotics one day to the very next day put me on Tylenol. If any of you out there have ever been addicted to any type of narcotic, then you could appreciate just the severity of the withdrawals and just the overall pain and suffering that can cause. Once I was placed on Tylenol, I battled for a couple years dealing with my addiction to the medication. And I learned that I could buy these drugs off of the street. And in the process of doing so, my ex-wife and I continually bought drugs, anything and everything that came around. It was a constant conflict within my heart because I knew the Lord. And he was always there with me, even in the midst of my sin. But this conflict pushed me hardcore to want to get myself clean. And I heard about a clinic that provided a legal high, and the medication was called Subutex. So in 2013, I'd gotten on Subutex, and I stayed steady with it for about 5 years. Yes, I stayed clean in the terms of not doing other drugs. However, I was still addicted to a medication that gets you high. My ex-wife, on the other hand, was on the same medication but continued to dip her feet and her life further into the drug world. In 2016, all of it came to a head. CPS over an incident had gotten involved, and they came into our home and interviewed us and informed us that not only was she doing this, but the Subutex, but she was also into methamphetamines, and they wanted to do drug tests. They informed us that day that they were taking my children from me. My children were at school at the time, so I could not protect them and keep the CPS from taking them. They went to their schools, ripped them out of school, and immediately placed them in foster care. It was a very, very dark time, but there was still some hope, and the hope was that my ex-wife and I could get ourselves clean, get off of everything that we were on, and pursue getting our children back. Well, over the next 2 years, my ex-wife continually tested positive for methamphetamines and other drugs in her system, and CPS informed us that it was going to be almost impossible for us to get our children back. I had went a day later and did another drug test, And when I got home, I found a note from my ex-wife informing me that she no longer wanted to fight to get the children. She did not want the responsibility of raising the children. And she was leaving me and leaving my children, and she was moving. This was the darkest time in my life. It felt as if there was no hope left. I had nothing. I had lost everything. In my mind, prior to losing my children and my wife, I felt like a very wealthy man. I had 3 children that I loved and adored, regardless of the lifestyle I was living. I loved my ex-wife very much. And now I was alone and without both my children and my wife. I remember, suicidal thoughts creeping into my mind and in my home. But the one thing that kept me from engaging those thoughts was the fact that, with her not in the picture, maybe I could still have a chance of getting them back. But that hope was very mild. And I remember in 2017 standing in an empty home, a home that had all of my ex-wife's things, old things in it, all of my children's old things, their toys and their blankets, empty beds. I remember falling on my knees in the living room of my home. And crying out to God and asking God to take control of my life, because every time I controlled my life, I destroyed it. And I knew, almost like an epiphany occurred, that God wanted me to get off of the Subutex. So I agreed. I agreed to take the steps that He wanted me to take and not the steps that I wanted to take. I knew it was going to be hard. Anybody that's ever been addicted to Subutex or been on it for a prolonged period of time, they could verify very quickly that the fear of coming off that drug is so intense and so powerful. The withdrawals last for months. But I told the Lord, I said, God, I'm willing to do this, but I won't be able to do it alone. I need your help. So I began. And I laid in a lazy boy recliner for about 3.5 months. And the Lord sent my neighbor to me, every day. Her name was Susie, or Sue. And she would come up and she would clean the house and she would check on me and she would cook me dinners. My grandparents would do the same. And after about 3.5 to 4 months of just unbelievably horrible withdrawals, I had finally come out the other end. The moment it was done, I fought the CPS system for about another 9 months, and by the grace of God, I had won my CPS case. My children were back in my home. And as happy as I was about it, I was still very much alone. My ex-wife had left. I had been married at a very early age, the age of 18. She followed me to the military and was with me through the whole process. We were married for about 13 years. I was never one who was a playboy. I didn't like, anything to do with that. I was a family man in my heart through and through. And I was very lonely. And I remember praying to God, please send me somebody who would love me for me, who would love my children as if they were her own, who was clean, was not on drugs, and somebody who would fit the picture best. And I remember about a couple months afterwards, I had seen this beautiful woman that I knew as a child pop up as a person you may know. And I remember clicking on her profile, and her profile picture said, "Without Jesus, I am nothing." And that was a very, very big lure for me. So I clicked on her profile and checked her out and found out she was single. So I sent her a friend request on Messenger, and in about 5 minutes she had responded and accepted it. And she sent a waving hand, and I remember responding to it and asking her about herself, seeing how she was doing, and asked if I could come visit her at her work. Found out she worked at Walmart in the electronics section. She agreed. I went to Walmart. I asked her if she would go to lunch with me, and I remember her response is just like it happened yesterday. She said, "I'd love to." So we went to lunch, and within another month or so, we were married. From that moment, I can honestly say that God has been in my life nonstop ever since. I have seen nothing but growth, from losing everything to gaining everything back. But the story was not over, because over the next 5 years, we had gone from living in a rundown trailer on my grandmother's property to now being in a 4-bedroom brick home on 4 acres of property in which we own in South Carolina. And even to this day, it's hard to see, it's almost surreal to see where we came from 5 short years ago to where we are now. And the entire moral of this story is that if there's somebody out there and they are fighting, whether it be the CPS system, or they're fighting a custody battle, or they're fighting some giant like David did, there are enemies out there that are too big for us ourselves to handle alone. But if you would just fall on your face and ask Christ to come into your heart and save you, I promise you, if you let Him fight your battle for you, you will come back out on top. And it won't just be gaining back what you've lost, it will be gaining tenfold. Just like the story of Job, the man lost everything. But he stayed faithful to God, and he trusted in Jesus. He trusted in the Lord. And the Lord brought him from nothing to having more wealth, and having more family, and having more of everything that he had had before. He restored it all and gave back tenfold. Again, if you're going through something like this, please just put your faith in God. He can lead you, and He will lead you through it. That's the moral of this story. I hope and pray that if this story has touched anybody's heart, if they know anybody who is going through a tough time, they're fighting a giant that they cannot overcome themselves, please like, subscribe, and share this video with them. I appreciate you guys all sticking by and listening to this story, listening to my testimony. I hope that it's blessed somebody's heart. And thank you once again. God bless you, and God keep you.